She looked me in the eye and said, "We don't need you without money." And just like that, I became a ghost in my own house. Have you ever sat down at your own kitchen table only to feel like a stranger in the room you built with your own hands? My name is Ralph Sutter. I'm 74 years old. I spent my entire working life 4 decades as a safety inspector at one of Detroit's largest steel fabrication companies. I was the guy who checked every harness, every beam, every weld. If something went wrong, it was on me. And you'd better believe I took that seriously. But when the company brought in a new manager, some 32-year-old in designer shoes named Travis, who thought everything could be automated, they didn't care about experience anymore. They cared about efficiency, cost reduction, and streamlining. I wasn't fired. That would have been too direct. No, they used words like transitioning out early, offboarding, and grateful for your years of service. They handed me a coffee mug with the company logo on it and a pre-printed letter that said my contributions would not be forgotten. I walked out that afternoon carrying a box of photos and a pair of steel-toed boots I'd worn down over 2 decades. I didn't say goodbye. What was there to say? But the worst part wasn't losing the job. It was coming home. The sun was already slipping behind the row of low houses on Shelby Avenue when I stepped through my own front door. Melissa's boots were in the hallway. Sophie's glittery backpack lay on the couch. Lucas's basketball thudded somewhere in the backyard. My daughter's voice drifted in from the kitchen. "Sophie, you left your slime on the counter again. I told you it stains." I stood there for a moment staring into the house I had bought 32 years ago. I had refinanced it twice, once to help pay Melissa's tuition, which she dropped out of, and again when she divorced that deadbeat Brian, who left her with 2 kids and a pile of debt. She came back home just for a few months. That was almost 4 years ago. I moved into the small guest room near the garage. I paid every utility, every grocery bill, and Melissa, she didn't work. She said she was figuring things out. Her plan changed every 3 months: a photography course, a babysitting service, a startup idea involving bath bombs. I never said much. I just kept working. It's what I knew how to do. But that evening, something shifted. Melissa walked into the living room still holding a mixing bowl, her long brown hair tied up in a messy bun. "You're home early," she said, eyeing me. What happened? I sat down at the edge of the armchair and exhaled slowly. They let me go. She blinked. "What, I was laid off today," I said. "The company's replacing inspection staff with automation." Melissa set the bowl down harder than necessary. "You mean you don't have a job anymore?" "No, just the pension now. It's not much, but we'll manage." She stared at me like I had just kicked her dog. "And what do you expect me to do, Dad?" she asked, voice rising. "We can't live off your pension. Lucas has basketball dues. Sophie needs braces. I was supposed to start massage therapy certification next month." I rubbed my temples. "Melissa, maybe it's time you started working again. Lucas is old enough to watch Sophie for a few hours after school. You could—" She cut me off, laughing bitterly. "What am I supposed to do? Flip burgers, wait tables at 43? "There's no shame in honest work," I said. "There's shame in being dumped into poverty," she snapped. "Do you have any idea what it's like to be me? To be a single mom with 2 kids and no future? Because you didn't plan for this." The injustice of her words knocked the wind out of me. "I spent 40 years planning," I said quietly. "Every dollar I saved went to you. Your lawyer during the divorce. The home renovations so the kids would have their own rooms. I even gave up the new roof last winter because you wanted Christmas to be special." Melissa's face twisted, and for a second, I saw the little girl I once carried on my shoulders. But the girl was gone. "I can't do this," she said coldly. "If you can't contribute anymore, then maybe you shouldn't live here." It took me a full 10 seconds to comprehend what she'd just said. "You want me to leave?" Her voice didn't waver. "We don't need you without money." I stared at her, the room spinning. This was my house. I built this life. I gave everything. And now I was disposable. I didn't yell. I didn't curse. Maybe I should have. But I just stood there nodding like a man who finally heard the truth he'd been avoiding for too long. Melissa didn't look angry anymore. She looked relieved. "You can stay a couple more nights," she added. "I mean, it's not like I want you out on the street. But we need stability, Dad. The kids can't see me falling apart because you didn't plan for your old age." I almost laughed. Not because it was funny, but because the irony was so thick I could have choked on it. I did plan. I just didn't plan for the part where your own child forgets everything you've done the moment the money runs out. I went to the back room, my little suite off the garage, and sat on the edge of the cot. The walls were bare. The carpet still had stains from the time Lucas spilled grape juice. I reached under the bed, pulled out the small lockbox where I kept my important papers, birth certificate, insurance documents, deed to the house that was still legally mine. Paid off 95% with my sweat and calloused hands. But what good was a name on a title when the people inside no longer saw you as family? The next morning, I woke up before the sun. I packed a small duffel bag, just the basics. 2 changes of clothes, my medications, shaving kit, my watch. I didn't take anything from the house. I didn't want to. Melissa didn't come out to say goodbye. Sophie was still asleep. Lucas stood at the front door as I slipped on my jacket. "Grandpa? Are you really leaving?" he asked, voice quiet. I nodded. "Just for a while, buddy." "Did Mom make you?" I didn't answer that. Some truths at his age he didn't need yet. He stepped forward and hugged me. "I don't want you to go." I know I said, my throat tightening, but it's better this way. "You take care of your sister, okay?" Lucas nodded, blinking hard. And then I left. I walked 2 blocks in the cold morning mist, my breath hanging in the air like ghosts. At the bus stop, I counted the cash I had left. $25 and a few coins. No job, no plan, no one waiting. I got on the bus to Pontiac, the next town over, and spent $6 on a day pass. The driver, an older man with tired eyes, gave me a glance that said, "I've seen too many men like you." I asked him where I might find a place cheap enough for someone with barely enough money for a fast food meal. He pointed me to a faded yellow building near the train tracks. Sunrise Lodge, the sign read, though there was nothing sunny about it. Inside, the smell of mildew and stale cigarettes clung to the air like wallpaper. The woman at the front desk, middle-aged, wiry red hair name tag, said Sherry, looked up from her crossword puzzle. "Room's 32 a night," she said. "You want one? I've got 25? I answered, trying not to sound embarrassed. She studied me for a second, then sighed. "Fine. You can sleep in the lounge on the pull-out. Showers down the hall. Towels are clean, mostly. No loud snoring." I managed a half smile. "Deal?" She handed me a key card. "And hey," she added, nodding toward a small shelf by the coffee machine, "we've got scratch tickets over there. Lucky draws tonight. $1 apiece. I nodded politely, not planning to waste money on dreams. That night I lay on the pull-out bed, springs digging into my back, staring at the stained ceiling. I thought about Eleanor, my late wife, and how she always reminded me, don't give them your life, Ralph. Give them your love. But never forget you're allowed to live too. I'd given Melissa everything. And now I had nothing, except maybe that one last dollar and a shelf of scratch tickets by a motel coffee pot. It's a strange thing how quiet the world becomes when you're no longer useful to anyone. That night at Sunrise Lodge, I sat alone in the rec room sipping a cup of lukewarm instant coffee and staring at a faded painting of a moose by a frozen lake. The couch beneath me sagged in the middle. The television flickered in and out of signal. Outside, a train rattled by, shaking the window like a nervous tick. I had $24 left. Be enough for another night, maybe 2 if I skipped eating. But even if I stretched it out, then what sleep on a bench, beg a shelter to take me in? I'd worked since I was 16. Paid taxes, saved receipts, raised a daughter, buried a wife. And here I was, 60 hours after losing my job, one forgotten man in a no-name motel, treated with more decency by the woman at the front desk than by my own blood. Sherry, the desk lady, knocked once and walked in holding a paper plate with 2 halves of a sandwich and a chocolate chip cookie. Turkey and cheddar, she said. Leftover from my dinner. You look like you haven't eaten since breakfast. I blinked. I haven't eaten since yesterday. She handed me the plate. Well, lucky you then. I tried to refuse, but my stomach betrayed me. I took the sandwich like it was gold. You from Pontiac, she asked, sitting down across from me. Detroit, I replied between bites. Just got displaced. That what they call it now? She smirked. Displaced. Like a sofa moved into the garage. I smiled. She was rough but kind. Got any plans? She asked after a moment. I hesitated. Find work. Maybe janitorial night shifts. Whatever's hiring someone who still has his knees. She nodded like she'd heard it all before. Then she pointed to the corner shelf near the vending machine. Well, if you're feeling lucky, we got scratchers. Michigan Max just rolled over. Payouts $3.6 million. I snorted. I've never bought a lottery ticket in my life. Then maybe you're overdue, she said with a wink. I didn't answer, but that night, long after she'd gone and the motel went quiet, I found myself standing in front of that shelf, $1 in my hand. The sign read, "Try your luck, $1." Each drawing at 10 p.m. The ticket designs were garish stars, gold coins, firecrackers. It all felt silly, childish even. But when you've lost everything, even a delusion feels like something to hold on to. I picked one labeled Michigan Max Gold Series. Slipped my last $1 bill into the box on the counter. By the time the drawing came around, I'd nearly forgotten. I was half asleep on the couch, the sandwich long gone, the cookie saved for morning. Then Sherry came in again, flipping on the TV. You want to see if the universe has a sense of humor. I chuckled and pulled the ticket from my coat pocket. 6 numbers, 07, 14, 23, 35, 41, 49. I didn't pick them. They were printed automatically. The announcer came on the screen with 2 white teeth and a voice like he'd overdosed on caffeine. Good evening, Michigan. It's time for the Max Million Gold Draw. Tonight's jackpot, $3.6 million. The machine spun. The first ball rolled out. 7. I blinked. Second number 14. My mouth went dry. Third number 23. I sat up straight. Fourth number 35. Sherry leaned forward. Wait. You got those? I couldn't speak. I just nodded. Fifth number 41. My hands began to shake. The room was dead quiet. Final number 49. I stared at my ticket. All 6 numbers. A perfect match. Sherry's mouth dropped open. Oh my God, she whispered. You just won $3.6 million. I didn't move. Couldn't. My heart pounded so hard I thought I might pass out. A minute ago, I was wondering how to stretch a cookie and a few bucks into a survival plan. Now, the numbers on this tiny slip of paper had rewritten my future. Sherry was already scrambling for the motel phone. You need to call the number on the back of the ticket, she said, practically shoving it toward me. They'll verify your win, get you set up with the claim process. This isn't some scratcher prize. This is the big one. I held the ticket in my hand like it might disintegrate, like it wasn't real, like maybe I'd fall asleep and wake up back in that crumbling guest room jobless and broke. The number on the back was a simple 1-800 line. I punched it into the motel phone with trembling fingers. Michigan State Lottery, came a chipper voice. How can I assist you tonight? I think I just won the max gold draw, I said, my voice barely more than a whisper. Let's get you verified, she replied. Can I get the 6 numbers on your ticket? I read them off slowly. There was silence for a moment. Then softly, Congratulations, Mr. Sutter. You are holding the winning ticket. You've won $3.6 million. My knees nearly gave out. I sank back into the couch, gripping the phone like a lifeline. Tomorrow, she continued, please come to the regional office in Lansing with your ticket and government-issued ID. We'll walk you through the paperwork and payout options. Do not sign or alter the ticket before then. I muttered a thank you and hung up. The dial tone buzzed like a hummingbird in my ears. Sherry was watching me like I'd grown a second head. So she asked, eyes wide. I couldn't even speak. I just nodded. She sat down across from me and crossed her arms. Well, look at you, Ralph Sutter. From cast-out retiree to millionaire overnight. I shook my head, still stunned. It doesn't feel real. It is, she said. And you better believe it. You just bought yourself a second chance. I didn't sleep that night. I laid on the pull-out sofa, the ticket clutched in my hand, replaying every conversation I'd ever had with Melissa. Every birthday I paid for. Every winter coat I bought for her kids. Every late-night overtime shift I pulled so they'd never go without. And then her words. We don't need you without money. I closed my eyes and whispered into the darkness. Well, now I have money. But I sure as hell don't need you. At 6:00 a.m., Sherry handed me a hot thermos of coffee and a bagel wrapped in a napkin. I'll call you a cab to Lansing, she said. My treat. Don't argue. I looked at her, a woman who owed me nothing, yet treated me with more dignity in 2 days than my own daughter had in years. I reached into my wallet and took out the last $20 bill I had. Here, I said, for the sandwich and your kindness. She pushed it back. Buy yourself a damn steak instead. The ride to Lansing took 2 hours. I stared out the window, watching strip malls and pine trees blur into one another. The sky was a gray canvas, flat and endless. It didn't feel like a lucky day. but maybe luck didn't feel the way you expected. At the lottery office, I was led into a quiet back room by two officials in suits who looked like they'd seen every shade of reaction, sobbing, screaming, fainting. I just nodded. They verified the ticket, checked my ID, took photos, explained my options. "You can take the full amount over 20 years, one of them said, or a lump sum today of $2.5 million after taxes. "I'll take the lump," I replied without hesitation. And just like that, I wasn't broke anymore. They handed me a check and a list of financial advisors. I walked out of that glass building holding more money than I'd ever seen in my life, and for the first time in months, I felt taller. Like I had a spine again. That afternoon, I opened a bank account, then checked into a modest hotel on the edge of town. Not fancy, but it had clean sheets, a working heater, and no mildew on the walls. I laid on the bed, staring at the ceiling fan, and asked myself, what now? For 74 years, I'd worked, provided, tolerated, endured. Now, for the first time, I could choose. No obligations, no guilt, no shame. Just me, Ralph Sutter, a free man. It took me 3 days to leave Lansing. Not because I was unsure of where to go, but because for the first time in decades, no one was waiting on me. No boss, no bills, no child needing a ride to soccer practice. Just an open map and a check with my name on it. I bought a used black sedan, nothing flashy, but clean and quiet. I packed a duffel bag with 2 good shirts, a new shaving kit, and the only photo I had left of Eleanor, my late wife, forever smiling on a picnic blanket, a smear of mustard on her cheek she never knew about. I didn't head south, or west, or back toward Detroit. I went north toward the lake, toward silence. Someone at the bank mentioned a small town called Lighthouse Hill. Population just under $5,000. A place where the summers smelled like cut grass and the winters sounded like stories told by the fire. A town with a bookstore, a bait shop, and one cafe that still handwrites its menu each morning in chalk. I drove there without calling ahead, without knowing a soul. It felt reckless and thrilling. It felt like something a younger Ralph might have done. The town unfolded slowly as I drove in rows of old houses with white porches and painted shutters, flower boxes bursting with lavender and petunias, and a giant weathered sign that read, "Welcome to Lighthouse Hill, you're already home." I parked in front of the cafe and stepped out. The air smelled like pine and the lake breeze brushed my face like an old friend. For the first time in weeks, no years, I didn't feel like a burden. I felt new. The real estate agent's office sat between a barber shop and an antique store. Inside, the receptionist wore a cardigan with hand-stitched birds and offered me coffee before asking for my name. "I'm looking for something modest," I said. 2 bedrooms. Lakeview, if possible. Quiet. The woman Lorraine, I think, smiled. "We've got just the place. Been on the market 3 months. Belonged to an old couple who retired to Florida. Not fancy, but solid bones." She was right. The house sat near the far end of the lake, down a gravel road, with no street lamps and no traffic. A 2-story craftsman, pale blue with white trim, big front porch, and a stone chimney that whispered winter fires and second chances. When she opened the door, the scent of cedar and old stories hit me in the chest. There were creaky floors, tall windows, and a kitchen that looked like someone once made soup for grandchildren there. And the view, my God, the view. The back deck opened out to a sloping yard that led directly to the lake where the water caught the sky like glass. On the far right stood a pine tree so tall it looked like it had been waiting for someone to come home. "I'll take it," I said. Lorraine blinked. "You want to think about it?" "No. I've thought about enough. This is it." That evening, I stood barefoot on my new back porch, sipping black coffee from a chipped mug I found in the cupboard. I hadn't unpacked much, just a flannel shirt and a copy of Leaves of Grass Eleanor had gifted me once. And that's when I saw her, a tall woman with silver hair pulled into a loose twist, walking her dog along the lake path behind my yard. She moved with the kind of ease that made you forget about time. The retriever at her side trotted happily, as if the world didn't have sharp corners. She stopped when she saw me and raised a hand. I raised mine back. "You're the new man in the Jenkins house," she called out. "I guess I am," I said. "About time someone moved in. That porch has been lonely." She smiled, and in it I saw a softness that surprised me. Not flirtation, not curiosity, just recognition. Like she knew something about me and didn't need to ask. The next morning, I found myself back on the porch, coffee in hand, staring out at the lake, like it might answer the questions I hadn't asked yet. At exactly 7:45, the silver-haired woman reappeared, walking the same golden retriever. This time she didn't wave. She turned into my yard like she'd done it for years and called out, "Hope you've got more coffee. The smell's traveling halfway across the lake." I chuckled. "It's not fancy, but it's hot." "You want a cup? I thought you'd never ask," she smiled. She climbed the steps like she owned the place, not rudely, just naturally, like someone who didn't believe in awkward silences or long introductions. The dog settled near her feet, tail thumping gently. "Judith Kellerman," she said, extending a hand. "Most folks around here call me Jude. Retired teacher, widowed 6 years and still waiting for someone to fix the pothole on Forest Lane." "Ralph Sutter," I replied. "Retired, well, forcibly. Widowed 5 years, and I just got here." I know she grinned, sipping her coffee. Lorraine told the whole town. Lighthouse Hill may be small, but our gossip network is efficient. That made me laugh, a real laugh, not the polite kind I'd learned to fake. It had been a while. We talked for over an hour, about books about her late husband Leonard, who'd been a watchmaker, about Eleanor and the rose bushes she used to trim like bonsai. Jude told me the cafe down the road made a mean eggs Benedict if you asked for Benny style. I told her I hadn't eaten anything that didn't come in a wrapper for 3 days. She raised an eyebrow. "Then you're coming with me tomorrow." No argument. And I didn't argue. That cafe became a ritual. Every morning, same booth by the window, same order, same waitress named June who called me handsome in the way older women do, half teasing, half maternal. Jude and I traded sections of the paper-shared crossword clues, and one day she slid across a folded napkin and said, "Here, in case you forget to smile." On it was a doodle of me holding coffee and wearing a ridiculous grin. I pinned it on the fridge. She introduced me to the library where she volunteered twice a week, reading poetry to whoever would listen. She brought me to the town garden where old veterans like me pretended they weren't growing vegetables just to have someone to talk to. And she asked nothing of me. Not once. No favors, no chores, no "could you help me paint the fence?" Just presence. Company. That quiet kind of companionship that doesn't ask for attention, it just is. It was strange. After years of being useful, being needed, I didn't know what to do with simply being wanted. One Thursday evening, she invited me over for soup and cards. Her house sat on a hill with a blue roof filled with books and cats and jazz records. After dinner, as we sat on the back deck watching the sun spill over the lake, she said something I won't forget. "You know, Ralph, you don't owe anyone the rest of you. Not after they spent years taking the best of you." That sentence stopped something in me, a slow, grinding wheel that had been spinning out guilt since Eleanor died, since Melissa moved in, since every time I said yes when I wanted to say no. I looked at her, at the kindness in her face, and I realized I had found something I never expected. Not love, not yet, maybe not ever in the romantic way, but dignity. In her presence, I didn't feel like an old man to be managed. I felt seen. By the end of that month, the rose bushes in my backyard were blooming, Eleanor's favorite. Jude brought me fresh cuttings and taught me how to prune them properly. We planned a picnic by the lake for her birthday, and when the local paper ran a story titled "Newcomer Breathes Life into Jenkins' House," she cut it out and framed it. "Your Lighthouse Hill's newest mystery man," she teased. Maybe, but I wasn't hiding anymore. I was just beginning again. It was a Tuesday. One of those strange, too quiet Tuesdays when the air feels like it's holding its breath. I was in the garden, kneeling in the soil, trying to coax a stubborn row of snap peas into standing upright. Jude had gone to the community center for her poetry group, and the house was humming with peace, soft jazz playing from the porch radio breeze moving gently through the wind chimes. That's when I heard it, the crunch of tires on gravel, not the mail truck, not the neighbor's bike. This was deliberate. I stood slowly brushing dirt from my hands and turned to see a navy blue SUV pull into my driveway. Newer model, tinted windows, plates from Wayne County. The driver's door opened, and there she was. Melissa. I hadn't seen my daughter in almost 4 months. Not since the day I walked out of my house with nothing but a duffel bag and the last shreds of my dignity. Her hair was darker now, probably dyed. Her face looked thinner, but not in a way that spoke of health. More like worry had carved its place in her cheekbones. She wore an expensive-looking coat that didn't fit quite right. Her shoes, suede ankle boots, sank awkwardly into the gravel. She stood there for a moment, as if sizing up the house, as if calculating. And then she saw me. Her expression flickered something between surprise and forced warmth. "Dad," she called out. "Wow. Look at you." Gardening. I didn't smile. I didn't move. "Melissa," I said flatly, "how'd you find me?" She walked closer, arms crossed. "I called the real estate office, used your name, pretended I was your niece. Small-town folks are helpful, you know." Of course. Melissa always did know how to manipulate people when she wanted something. "And now that you found me," I asked, straightening up, "what exactly do you want?" She hesitated just for a second. Then came the practiced sigh. I heard she said softly, "About the lottery. Someone from the old neighborhood saw you on TV. Said a man your age walked out of the Lansing office with a multi-million-dollar check." Then I got curious. Did some digging. I nodded slowly. "So you came all this way to confirm it. I came all this way because you're my father," she said, trying on the voice she used when she wanted to sound earnest. "And because I want us to fix things. Fix things, you disappeared," she accused, her voice rising. "You just walked out and never called. Never said where you were going. You let us think you were, I don't know, dead, homeless, sick. You told me to leave, I reminded her. She flinched but recovered quickly. That was, said in anger, she murmured. You lost your job and I panicked. You know how scared I get about money, about the kids. I wasn't thinking clearly. You were thinking clearly enough to say you didn't need me without money. Her jaw tightened. Dad, please. I didn't come here to argue. No, I raised an eyebrow. Then why did you come? There was a long silence. And then came the truth. We're struggling, she said, as if that explained everything. Lucas got suspended. Sophie needs braces. I lost my job at the call center. I've applied everywhere, but nobody's hiring. We need help. I crossed my arms. And you thought what? That I'd just hand over a blank check. She bristled. I thought maybe you'd care about your family, about your grandchildren. I do care, I said evenly. But you and I both know this isn't about the kids. This is about you. And your habit of only calling me when your bank account runs low. She stepped closer, her voice colder now. You live in this big lake house, alone, with money you don't even know how to spend. And we're in a moldy apartment with leaking pipes. Lucas doesn't even have a working laptop. And yet I said you never called to ask how I was, not once, until you heard about the money. That stopped her. She didn't deny it. She just looked away. Melissa looked away, arms folded tight, jaw locked in the exact same stubborn line Eleanor used to warn me about when Melissa was a teenager. I could feel the storm building in her. And for once, I didn't flinch. You left me? She said suddenly, her voice sharpening. You abandoned me when I needed you most. I shook my head. No, Melissa. I stopped funding you. That's not abandonment. That's boundaries. You don't get to lecture me, she spat. You think you're some noble old man now. You're just a bidder has been with a lucky ticket. And now you want to punish me for needing help. I took a breath and said it plainly. I'm not punishing you. I'm protecting me. And it's about damn time someone did. Her face twisted in disbelief, as if the ground beneath her had just cracked open, and she didn't know whether to fall or fight. I gave you everything, I continued, my voice rising. When Grant left, I emptied my savings to get you a lawyer. I renovated my house so you and the kids could move in. I went without my prescriptions, skipped heating bills, canceled every vacation I ever dreamed of, all so you could land on your feet. And you did, Melissa. You landed. But you never got back up. You stayed right there waiting for someone else to carry you again. Melissa's lip trembled. But it wasn't regret. It was fury. So what? She hissed. You think you're some hero now, some martyr. You think I owe you for being a parent. No, I said, calm now, cold. But you owe me basic human decency. And you failed at that the moment you looked me in the eye and said, we don't need you without money. She stared at me, and for the first time I saw it. She wasn't crying because she was heartbroken. She was crying because her manipulation wasn't working. Just then, a voice rang out from the edge of the yard. Mom? It was Lucas. He had gotten out of the SUV at some point. His hood was up, hands in his pockets, eyes darting between us. What's going on? He asked cautiously. You said we were just visiting. Melissa spun around. Lucas, go wait in the car. No, he said flatly. I heard everything. His eyes turned to me and then softened. Hi, Grandpa. I gave him a small nod. Hi, kiddo. He walked up slowly, ignoring his mother's protests, and stopped just a few feet from me. You live here? He asked. I nodded. It's nice, he murmured. Peaceful. Then he looked back at his mother. You didn't tell me Grandpa won the lottery? Or that you kicked him out? Melissa flushed. That's not what happened. Lucas's voice was firm, clear. Yeah, it is. And I was there. I remember. She looked like she'd been slapped. Don't talk to me like that, she snapped. Why not? He shot back. You talk to him like he's garbage, Lucas. No, he said, voice trembling now. You're always mad, Mom. Always blaming someone. And he was the only one who never yelled. Who always made us dinner when you stayed in your room. Who fixed my bike and helped Sophie with math. You said he didn't matter because he didn't have money. But he did matter. He still does. Melissa looked like she might break, but not from shame. From the collapse of control. I'm done, she said sharply. We're leaving. She turned to me one last time. You'll regret this, Dad. I met her gaze without blinking. No. I regret not standing up for myself sooner. She spun on her heel and stomped toward the SUV. Lucas stood still. Go, she barked. Now! He turned back to me, his eyes shining. Can I write you? My throat tightened. Anytime, son. I'll always answer. He nodded, then followed her to the car. As they pulled away, Melissa didn't look back. But Lucas did. And he waved. I stood there long after the dust settled. Not because I was unsure, but because for the first time in decades I had told the truth. Out loud. In full. And the world didn't end. It just got quieter. Cleaner. Mine. The next morning, I poured coffee into the blue enamel mug Jude had claimed as mine, the one with the chipped handle and the faded world's okayest grandpa sticker she sneakily added one morning before breakfast. I stepped out onto the back porch and let the lake air settle over me like a blanket. It was cooler than usual for early June, the kind of crisp that wakes your bones but doesn't bite. The birds were louder than usual, like even they had something to say. Melissa's visit still lingered in the corners of the house, like the scent of a storm that had already passed. But I didn't feel hollow. I felt clean. The kind of clean that only comes when you finally tell the truth and stop apologizing for surviving. I sat in my chair, ran my hand along the armrest and thought about all the versions of me that used to sit like this versions bent under guilt, obligation, fear of being alone. Now I wasn't alone. Jude padded out from the kitchen in her bare feet, a shawl wrapped around her shoulders and her reading glasses pushed halfway down her nose. She looked at me, then the lake, then back at me again. She showed up, didn't she? I nodded. And she asked for money. Jude made a small sound that wasn't quite a sigh, wasn't quite a laugh. And you told her? No. She walked over, kissed the top of my head and whispered, "Good." We didn't talk about it again. That's how it is with some people. The ones who see you without needing an explanation. The ones who don't dig around your wounds like they're treasure maps. Jude didn't need to dissect it. She just needed to know I had finally chosen me. That afternoon, I went into town and bought new roses, not for Eleanor this time, but for the life I was planting now. I knelt in the garden with fresh soil under my fingernails and a smile on my face that didn't need anyone's permission. That evening, the mail arrived, Among the usual flyers and circulars was a hand-addressed envelope, the return address written in careful teenage handwriting. Lucas. I opened it slowly, my fingers trembling a little more than I expected. Dear Grandpa, I hope you're doing okay. Things are still tense at home. Mom's mad all the time. But I wanted to say thank you for standing up for yourself, for not letting her make you small. You've always been the one who made me feel safe even when everything else felt crazy. I still remember that night after Dad left, how you let me sleep on the couch next to you because I said the house felt too big without him. You didn't say much, just kept your hand on my shoulder. That was enough. I've started writing in a journal like you said. It helps. Sophie says hi. She drew you something and made me promise to send it next time. It's a picture of you riding a sea turtle. I'm not sure why. But she said you'd laugh. Maybe one day I can come visit. Maybe this summer. Love, Lucas. I sat down on the porch steps and read the letter again, slower this time. Then I placed it in the cedar box where I kept the few things that still made me believe in people. A boy like that, clear-eyed, thoughtful, he wasn't lost. Not yet. And if I had anything left to give in this life, it would be to make sure he stayed found. Jude found me sitting on the porch steps as the sky began to soften into evening. I held Lucas's letter in one hand and a half-empty mug of cold coffee in the other. She didn't ask what was in the envelope. She just sat down beside me, her shoulder pressing against mine, grounding me like the roots of one of her stubborn old hydrangeas. Was it a good letter, she asked after a while? I nodded. Better than I deserve. She smiled gently. You'd be surprised what we all deserve when we finally stop trying to earn it. That night we sat by the fireplace, a soft instrumental record spinning on the turntable. The roses Jude had arranged earlier that day gave off the faint scent of summer and second chances. I looked at her, this woman who had come into my life without warning, without demand, and felt something stir in my chest that I hadn't felt in years. Not just affection, but peace. Do you think people like us, I asked quietly, get another shot at happiness, real happiness? Not just the kind you're expected to be grateful for, but the kind you choose. Jude looked at me the way she always did, like I was a book she'd already read, but still loved to open. I don't think God lets love expire just because we have wrinkles, she said. I think He knows we still need someone to hold our hand, maybe more so than ever. That hit me deeper than I expected. Because the truth is, I hadn't just been carrying the weight of Melissa's betrayal. I'd been carrying shame, the shame of wanting joy, of wanting love again at 74, after everything. But that night, as we held hands in front of the fire, I realized something I want every person listening to Brian's story to hear. You're never too old to start again. You're never too broken to be whole. And you're never too forgotten to be found. 2 weeks later, I received another letter, this time from Melissa. It wasn't a demand. It wasn't dripping with guilt or entitlement. It was short, uneven, but something had shifted. Dad, I've started seeing a counselor. Lucas gave me some hard truths. So did you. I needed them. I won't ask for anything. Just, maybe one day we could talk. Melissa. I read it twice and folded it carefully. I didn't respond right away. Because grace isn't the same as amnesia, but forgiveness. The real kind starts with space. and truth and time. That Sunday, Lucas called me from Jude's landline. He had convinced his mom to let him visit for a few days after school let out. When I asked what changed her mind, he said simply, "She's starting to believe you might be right about her. That's scary for her." I told him I understood, and I did. I'm not angry anymore. Not in the way I was. I'm just clear. This chapter of my life isn't about fixing everything that came before. It's about living the part that's still ahead. Jude and I have started planning a little summer party, nothing fancy. Just coffee pie, some old music, and a few friends we've made around Lighthouse Hill. I told her I might even share my story out loud for the first time. She smiled and said, "About time." And maybe it is, because people need to hear life stories like this. They need to know you can go from being tossed out with nothing but a duffel bag and $25 to finding a home, a partner, a purpose. They need to know it's possible. Not easy, but possible. That's what Brian's story is about, isn't it? Not revenge, not fantasy, but freedom. The kind you earn when you finally stop asking for permission to live. The kind God still whispers into our bones if we're quiet enough to hear it. The kind that lets you sit on a porch with someone you love, smile at the rising sun, and say, "I'm here. I made it. And this time I'm staying." This was another chapter from Brian's story. If it moved, you share it. Because life stories like Ralph's deserve to be heard. Don't forget to subscribe, leave a comment, and let us know, what would you do if your second chance finally came?